Okay, so my name's Kevin Yallup, CTO of ACAMP, and today I'd just like to say a few words about ACAMP and how we're supporting the development of MNT products in various market sectors such as agriculture and so on. So my talk, first of all, will be a very brief introduction to micro and nanotechnology and its applications in agriculture and forestry. I think most of the talks today probably fill in the picture much better than my talk will, so I'm not going to say too many words about that. But I want to really spend a bit of time talking about how we set about supporting commercialization of MNT, and in particular how we work on sort of micro devices and micro products. We're less into the material side of the MNT supply chain, we're more into the products and technology side, and I'll just summarize with a few words. So what is MNT? So I thought it was always useful to start with a very, very broad perspective, because sometimes people are not quite sure what's meant by the words micro and nanotechnology. They're very widely used terms these days and bandied around an awful lot. So in my view, it's very simply defined as either something that's on the micron scale, typically sub 100 micrometers for microtechnology, or on the nano scale, or sub 100 nanometers for nanotechnology. So those are very, very simplistic definitions that give you a feeling that somewhere within that active process that you're trying to call micro nanotechnology is something, be it a critical layer or even a whole device, that is on the micron or on the nano scale. So that's my view of micro nanotechnology. It does stretch out a little bit when you come into the world of biotechnology and microfluidics, because you have to deal with cells, and they're pretty much micro devices themselves, but we are developing chips and technologies that handle cells, or can handle cells as well. So the kind of things you can do with micro and nanotechnology, really the biggest applications we deal with are sensors in one form or another, all designed to detect biochemicals, biomarkers, physical phenomena in all sorts of environments. I mean, we work with the oil and gas industry, and we develop sensors to put down oil wells, for instance. In the biospace, we do a lot of work on point of need pathogen detection. So we have several companies very interested in being able to bring detection closer to the actual point of need, and that's something that we work on with a number of our partners. Other very uses for micro nanotechnology, very small, possibly even handheld navigation systems, just for locating where you are, locating where objects are, and you'll hear a little bit more about that later on in this session as well. Point of care analysis devices, and perhaps the other big nano thing that we see quite a bit of interest in when we look at what's going on is things like biocidal coatings, or coatings with special properties for dealing with environmental conditions. So some of the applications that I believe that we're dealing with that fit into the agriculture and forestry domain, and you're going to hear about a lot more than I'm talking about today. Point of need pathogen detection, there's several people interested in that. Also point of need or point of use detection for various medical phenomena as well. Location and tracking, distributed sensor networks as well, being able to monitor what's going on over a wide field using lots and lots of small sensors that are pretty smart and able to talk with each other. And things like point of use chemical testing as well, so you can actually detect not just pathogens, but maybe pollutants or contaminants as well. So what does ACAMP do? Well, ACAMP was really founded in response to the sort of situation that was arising in the Alberta region probably 5 to 10 years ago now, where there'd been a lot of investment in the front end, a lot of investment in research. We've heard some really good research papers this morning. And that was starting to generate lots of useful IP, lots of useful ideas, and then people were starting to try to commercialize those ideas, spinning out companies, startups and so on, trying to get those ideas out to the end markets. And they weren't being too successful. I mean, the classic success rate for a spin out from university is about 1 in 5, and it takes a long time as well, which is not very encouraging. So the government had a sort of look at what was happening in the region and why people were struggling to get to the end markets, and here's some of the weaknesses that were found in sort of, especially in the spin-out culture. There were some larger companies as well which were getting towards end markets and starting to engage with customers who wanted to expand and grow as well. So product and market definition is often a bit of a challenge. Getting the right business model, finding the money, and two other major areas, actually doing a systematic approach to product development, so you develop products efficiently and systematically, and assembly and packaging, particularly for micro devices. So a microchip on its own is pretty useless unless it's put in a package that can be hooked up to the real world. So those are two big areas that were found missing in the physical side of the product development. So ACAMP was set up to actually address those issues and act as a sort of bridge between research and the marketplace, or a pathway that people could join at any point in their life cycle to accelerate the possibility of getting to market, and also reduce the risk and reduce the cost of getting to market as well, and hopefully spawn more successful businesses quicker. ACAMP was established as a not-for-profit in June 2008 with a funding of 15 million for 5 years. Actually, that's now 17 million, in fact, because we've received an additional grant from WED to buy some more capital equipment. 2 funding bodies, AET, which represents the provincial funding, and WD, which is regional funding, Western economic diversification. And so we set up to provide this path to commercialisation and supporting in 3 critical areas. So it's recognised there are weaknesses in the whole product definition marketing side of new companies. So marketing and business development is a very big activity for ACAMP, helping people do that. And then product development, the systematic methods of actually developing products efficiently. Finally, packaging and assembly. So working with ACAMP, we try to keep it as simple as possible. So we've got basically a simple fee-for-service model. And we also work, this can either be, you can pay we can either bill you literally for the hours we use on things like equipment, which we depreciate over 5 years, manpower charged at cost, and client paying for full materials and consumables, or we can agree a set price for achieving certain objectives on a project where we've got a clear project plan laid down with clear deliverables, and we'll agree that there's a certain cost to achieving each of those deliverables. Generally, we favour clients in Western Canada because of the nature of our funding. Our funders like us to do that. And clients can work with us in lots of different ways. We have a ton of equipment which is can be used by people who want to go and do their own work, essentially. So we'll rent out equipment. Either they come into our facility when it's a big piece of equipment that can't possibly be moved around or needs special facility requirements, or we can rent out test equipment which people can take away and use to do testing in their own laboratories. We can actually work at another level where they engage with our engineers who are experts on the pieces of equipment, and we'll set up processes and run processes for them, and actually do prototyping work, and even help with the whole design front end of product development as well, and optimization of products. And eventually we can even do some very low volume manufacturing. We're not set up to be a high volume manufacturing line, just like unlike the sort of the last paper you heard where people are manufacturing large volumes of materials. But we can do prototype and early market levels of units to get people to the point where they're starting to generate positive cash flow, and then can take the business further with volume manufacturing themselves or through outsource arrangements. One of the things we're very clear about is that we don't want your product IP. That's vital to your business that you retain ownership of that, and we recognise that, so we don't take any share in that, and that's differentiates us a bit from a lot of the sort of other more traditional models that are operating in this commercialisation space, where usually people want to take a share in the client's product IP. We don't do that. A new process know-how that we develop we actually develop our own process know-how when we get the equipment in, so you're welcome to use that, but we return ownership of that so that everybody can benefit from it, because we're funded by the government essentially to provide that benefit. So how the business splits roughly into 2. We have roughly equal numbers of people working in the marketing and business development side and in the engineering side. Probably more engineers these days because there's a lot more project work coming through for the engineers. So marketing and business development does all the classical marketing and business development things. Starting with opportunity and idea will help identify market strategies, business cases, IP protection, and we do quite a bit of work with people, helping people set up IP protection. Eventually manufacturing strategy, and also even getting out and talking to your customers and helping you through all that. The business development guy's main objective is to sort of mentor people, and rather than do the work for them, to help people mature and develop as owners of the business they're setting up.